Hey everyone, Lori Radis here with 12 Paw Designs, and today I'm going to do a video tutorial with you to show you how to shake your bunny tail. I'm going to show you how to make this cute little sign. These are things that I had around the house that I used to make. It was in my craft stash. I'm sure we all have one of those. And the free SVG file that you're going to use is from skills that I learned taking the 1-2-3 SVG class. I actually, in the software that I chose to use while taking the class is Adobe Illustrator, so I do all my design work in there. In the file, you're actually going to find there's 3 different files for you to choose from, so you can use which one you want to use. When I took the class back in fall of 2019, I wasn't sure about the class. I wasn't sure, was it for me? Was it worth my time and my effort and my money? And all I have to say is yes, yes, and 1000% yes. I took it mainly just for my personal skills and learning for myself. And today I'm actually running a business. I actually have my own website, Etsy page. I'm doing video tutorials like this one to show everybody how to do things, etc. My worry about was I going to get it, was I going to understand it, was all answered as soon as I started the course, to realize that all the skills that you learn are, you start with the foundation and you build on those skill sets. So each week you're learning something new, you're doing a fun project with it, you're sharing it in the group, and then you go on to the next week and you build on those, and you keep building and building and building until you can do things like these, making fun projects, wearing your own art, things like that. So come with me as I show you how to do this and show you that you can do this as well. You can design your own stuff, you can make your own things, and you can have so much fun doing it. So come on, let's join the journey with me.
Okay, so next we're going to prep our board. And this was a board that I had around. It's a 12 by 12 or 11.5 by 12, something like that. It was just the next one I had. And I didn't quite like the paints that I have. I wanted more of a teal color. So what I did with it is I just took teal and I mixed white together and painted my board that way. And you can see I just mixed it in a plastic Tupperware container we had from takeout that I washed and reused. And then as the board was drying between coats, I just put it in a Ziploc bag and then stored it that way, and then I was able to just open it up, and I stored the paintbrush in a Ziploc bag too, just so I don't have to keep washing it and reusing it. I do one side with every color that I had, and then I went back and I redid the other ones because I wanted to make sure, or then I would flip it over and then I did the other side. As you noticed, I ran out of paint on the one side, which isn't a big deal. I just mixed up some new stuff and then just painted that whole back side with the one color and stuff like that. So it worked out really, really well. But if you don't have a color you want, just mix it. White and the teal came out to a really, really pretty light teal for me, and that was exactly what I was looking for. So next up, we're going to open up our cutting software. And today I'm actually going to show this in Silhouette Studio. And in the zip file, you're going to find 4 different files. You're going to find the SVG file, which you can use in the Silhouette Business Edition or in your Cricut software. The DXF version, if you have the basic version of Silhouette. You'll find the EPS for other cutting software, and a PNG file if you want to do something like a print and cut. And so basically I'm just opening up the SVG file, and inside you're actually going to see 3 options. Decide which option you want to use, and then go ahead and delete out the other options or hide them, or whichever way you want to go with it. And so I did all that, and then I set up my cut file. And I actually, because I'm doing this as a stencil, I cut 2 different stencils. And so one is just the bunny, and the other one is the words, because I want to stencil the bunny first and then I want to put my words on second. So you will notice I did 2 separate areas for it and worked it from there. And I just put it on one mat so that I wouldn't have to use 2, or in my case I just left it right on the roll and just did one actual cut and stuff like that to make life a whole lot easier. So you can actually see I put a cut line. I actually put a box around the words, and I put a cut line to help make that cut easier, so I can just actually have that square and put it right onto my board and work from there. And I also did the rotation on the bunny because I was being cheap and conservative and wanted to get the most use out of it, so I'll still have some room to save off for future. And then of course I'll cut the bunny tail out of, I use glitter heat transfer vinyl for the tail because I wanted that little bit of shine for it. And so that will be a separate cut on there as well. So I'm just working on getting everything lined up right now. And then once that's done, I'm going to take it and do the send. And when I send it to my cutter, I'm just selecting the stencil material. Nothing special. I select that and I'll send it to the cutting machine at that point and everything else like that. I let it do all the cuts and everything else. And then when it's done cutting, before I pull it out of my machine, I actually like to do a test pull on the vinyl to see and make sure that everything is cut properly. Because if I eject it out of my machine, I can't put it back in to recut it again to get those lines done. So that's why I always check it before I pull it out to make sure that everything looks good. And then once that's done, then I can go ahead and eject the whole thing out, and then we'll go back and we'll come back in a little bit and we're going to do the weeding. Okay, now that we have it out of the cutting machine, the next thing up is that we're going to weed our stencil vinyl. And here I'm just cutting off what we're going to be using, and you can see where the cut lines are on there. And because we're using stencil material, we are going to pull away where we want the paint to adhere. Okay, so if you look at it, you can see where the bunny is, and you can actually see where the words are. So I'm just going to grab a hold of the bunny, and I'm actually going to pull him out. Now, he came off really clean and stuff like that. You can save him for a future project and stencil around him. So the choice is yours, or you can just throw it away whichever way. I did save mine, and then ended up, the cat got hold of it, so I ended up tossing it. Once that's done, then I'm going to go on and do the same thing with the words. And I'm going to, again, you're going to weed out where you want the paint to adhere. And once you have all that done, you can cut away the extras and just save your squares. And things like that. If you're not really sure if you have everything, if you can't see it on there, sometimes I like to leave open my cutting software so I can actually see everything that I have or need, so I don't miss something on the weeding portion of it. But this one's pretty straightforward. It's fairly easy to see with the stencil material that I'm using. Today I actually am using Starcraft's stencil vinyl, but you can just as easy use the Oramask 813. Whichever you have and whichever is easier for you to use, and you can actually go from there. So you just pull off what you don't need, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put it on our board and put the pretty paint on it to make it look all pretty. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take our transfer tape and we're going to apply it to the stencil material. So I just lay it down. I have the 6-inch wide roll, and I lay it on top of there, stick a little bit to my mat, and then I just use my little squeegee and I roll it down, and then just cut everything off extra that I don't need. Then once I have that done, I'm actually going to burnish it on both sides just to make sure that it adheres well and pulls off the back side. Next, I'm going to take my board and I'm going to take the bunny, because I'm going to do the bunny part first, and I'm actually going to pull off the backing of it and attach it onto the board. I use the words just to help me with the spacer. And you'll also notice as well, I moved my bunny down towards the bottom of the board so that I can actually decorate the top with ribbon and jute and things like that. Because otherwise, if it was too close, I was going to have a tough time decorating the top. So that's something to keep in mind, is your spacing and how you're going to finish off your board. So that's why I actually did that as well and put it towards the bottom of it. You'll also notice that I actually had a little situation when I was pulling the transfer tape. I accidentally ripped or pulled a little bit of his ear, and it was no big deal. I just took my little tweezers and I straightened it out and flattened it out. And then you're going to want to make sure that you push all the edges down really, really well so that the paint and everything do not get underneath your transfer vinyl or underneath your stencil material. And so once that's done, then we can actually start applying the paint to the board. Next, I picked my paint colors, and you can actually see I have a mix of paints. And again, I used what I had on hand. I actually used the makeup sponges from the Dollar Tree. I like them because you get, I think there's like 28 or 30 of them in a package. And so you can rip them apart and make smaller ones and utilize things like you want. And you can actually see that I have a mix of acrylic paint and chalk paint for this one. The pink chalk paint that I had, I thought was a little light for the bunny. I wanted him a little darker. And again, I mixed my paint. I didn't quite have what I wanted, no big deal. I just took a plastic top from a to-go container, and then I just mixed the colors together to actually get that darker pink that I wanted for the bunny rabbit. So then once I get that mixed, the paint mix that I wanted, then I'm going to go ahead and stencil the vinyl, or stencil the bunny. Now I put a little bit more paint on it just because it's a lighter pink going on top of the teal. I actually went over the bunny a couple of times just to make sure that I had good coloring on that bunny, because I wanted to make sure that he really had nice color to him and everything looked the way I wanted to and things like that. So I went a little bit darker on that bunny to make sure that he looked really well. Then once I had the paint on there and the coloring just the way I wanted to, you want to pull your stencil material while it's still wet, because you don't want to leave it on there too long because it'll dry, and you have an opportunity where seepage will happen underneath there. And then if there's any extra material left, you just use your knife or your tweezers and you just pull it off of there and you're good. Okay, so now that we have the bunny done, now we're going to take our words and we're going to put the words and stencil the words onto our sign. Again, pull the backing off, and then you're going to place your words on your sign. Again, you can line them up to the bunny, make sure everything looks good. I have shake that I have it lined up so that it's between the ear and the head, and then the bunny part goes by the little fur part that comes out by his whiskers area and stuff like that. And now you're just going to see that I'm really rubbing it down really well, because I want to make sure that, because these are thinner lines, I want to make sure that I'm getting good adhesion. I'm also staying away from the bunny rabbit and trying not to push too much around him because he's still kind of damp. So I want to make sure that I'm not putting the stencil vinyl on top by the bunny rabbit, because I don't want them sticking there. And so once I have those words pushed on really good, I'm going to take and pull off the transfer tape at this point, and you can see it's sticking pretty good. So you want to keep that transfer tape as flat to the board as possible. So you can actually see I'm just rolling it off and pulling it there, because if you start pulling at an angle, you're going to start pulling up your words. And so you can see I had a little bubble, pulled it up, or I had something underneath there. I just lifted it up, pulled out whatever debris I had there, straightened out the letter, and away I go again. Again, you want to keep that transfer tape as flat to the board as possible when you're pulling it, because it will make it a lot easier for you. Again, it was pretty sticky, so I had to move the board and actually pull a little bit harder. So once that's done, then you can actually go ahead and start painting. Okay, so then for the colors for the words, I'm actually using purple, teal, and then a pink. And I had some really color shifting purple and teal, and it really is kind of a fun color, but the problem is it was really light, so I had to go over a couple of times on my letters with the paint just to make sure that I had good solid coverage. I probably could have put white underneath it so it popped a little bit more, but I was really happy with the way it looked afterwards, and I didn't need to do that. Okay, so I just went through, and again, this is where I really like the makeup sponges, because I could have the different colors on the different sponges and sponge the paint on where I wanted it. So decide what colors you want to use. There's little areas you can divide. There's little the little dots and the lines and things like that, so you can make it. You can actually see there's a few times where I actually wanted to get in there a little closer and make sure I got things in really close because of the cut lines and stuff like that. But again, I just kind of went with my different colors over and over until I really got good dark coverage, and went from there and stuff like that. So have fun, choose your colors. Again, like I said, I had on hand, I didn't go and buy anything extra. I had a translucent purple and I had a translucent teal, which was kind of fun. And then the bunny was actually that dark pink that I used and mixed into the bunny color. So it really was a good hue color. And then I used the lighter color from the bunny for some of the other lines that I needed and things. And like I said, I did have to go over a couple of times just to make sure that it was nice and dark, because it was really thin at that point. But I did like the differences with the translucents, with the solid colors and things. So once that's done, then we actually pull the stencil off. And then once we have it off, then we're going to take You can use your pick or your tweezers, whichever way you like to do that. And you're going to want to go and pull off the centers of like the A's and the B's and things like that. And you can actually see I did have a little bit of seepage where I probably didn't rub down really well with the stencil material in my finger. So I just lightly took my craft knife and I just went in there and cleaned up those edges. And then a small detail brush will help fill in any areas that you maybe thought that you didn't have really well. And you can see I had a little pink on the teal, and you just kind of clean all that stuff up. I then decided that I wanted my edges of the board distressed a little bit, so I took my sanding block and I just sanded around it and gave it that little extra. And then I took a little bit of white and dry brushed it. And dry brushing, if you can see, I just took the back of the piece of paper, rubbed off as much paint as I could, and then just went around the board to give it that extra little look to it. And the dry brushing will actually adhere to the paint on raised edges and things. And it's better off to go as dry as possible, and you can always add more paint on. It's harder to take paint. So the next thing we're going to do is now it's time to add the little bunny tail on. So I cut out the bunny tail again out of heat transfer vinyl, and it's white glitter. So I'm just going to weed my little tail. So you can see I had a cut box around that too. And I'm just going to cut out the tail portion of it, pull it off my mat, cut it, and then I'll put it onto the board. I'm actually use my little mini heat iron for it, and put the vinyl down, and then I'm going to put my Teflon sheet over it. And again, you don't need very long with it, so I'm going to put it down, use my my mini iron, and then kind of check it to make sure everything is looking good. So you can actually see I'm adding that little sparkle on for his tail. Okay, now we get to finish our project, and for me, I love this portion of it. So I took my heat gun or my glue gun, and I actually put a little bit of dotted glue on the back side of the board, and then I just took jute, again, stuff I had on hand, and I just wrapped it around the board a couple of times, and then put a little more glue down, and then pressed it down to make sure that it stayed there. Cut everything off, and then the next thing I'm going to do is make a messy bow. I like a messy bow because, one, some people aren't good at tying bows, which is no big deal, and with a messy bow you don't have to be perfect with it. So I just took strips of ribbon that I had. Some you can see is from the Dollar Tree, some stuff I had from different projects from previous years and things like that. And so I cut them into lengths that I wanted, and I think these are about 4 to 5 inches long. And I just took some and layered them, and I actually took strands of jute too and did the same thing, and I just layered them and twisted them around, as you can see, kind of like in X forms, and just laid them on there and just went back and forth. Then I took smaller 1/8 inch ribbon, threw that in there, and again I repeated the whole process all over again, adding that jute in. And then to finish off and tie the messy bow, I just took a piece of jute, gathered everything up in my fingers, and then took that piece of jute, squeezed everything together, took the piece of jute, and I wrapped it around my messy bow and then tied it in the back. Added a few extra strands of ribbon in the back too to give it that color, and you can see I just tied it around, pulled it really good, and then gave it a good knot. So they're not hard to do, you guys, they're just really fun. And then mess it up as much as you want, and then once you have it the way you want it, you can then glue it onto the board. And you will probably find that you're gluing, or once you have it glued on and things like that, you'll probably mess around with it a little bit more, which is cool. I held it on there, made sure everything was good. I then took some plastic flower buttons that I had, and then took a button and I put the button down to give it that extra pop of color, and then I took a button and I glued it on top of it. So you can see there's just that little extra color on it. You can just use buttons, you can use whatever you have. Again, this is what's in your stash, and go from there. I also decided I wanted a little flower. In the final picture you'll see it. I actually added a little flower in by the tail and things like that to give us something extra as well. I hope you enjoyed Shake Your Bunny Tail tutorial and stenciling and things like that. Again, I cannot tell you enough how much 123 SVG changed my life. It was so enjoyable. The course is enjoyable. Michelle is an absolute amazing instructor. I cannot say enough about her. The community that welds in, I've made some amazing friends through there. People I will have never met in anything like that, but we chat here and there through IM, Facebook. We have an alumni group, things like that. I just love how the course builds on each other, how everybody's there supporting each other, and things like that. Every week I was so excited, like, oh, did the next week drop so I can actually work on the new skill and the new project and things like that. So if you have questions, reach out, ask away, because I can't say enough about it, and I really think you're going to enjoy it. If you ever wanted to make your own SVG cutting files and do your own designs, this class is for you, even if you're only doing it for your personal self, because that was really what my goal was when I first started. So do it for yourself. Invest in yourself, invest in your time, because it will come back to you tenfold and you will absolutely love it. And go from there. And I'm actually going to be coaching this year, or this time around as well, and I'm so excited because we have teams to help make sure that everybody is checking in and making sure that everything is going well for people. You can ask questions as you go. It is so much fun, you guys. I cannot tell you enough about it. So come join us in 123 SVG and invest in yourself and have an amazing time.